When I first started in my job here, I'd only been here for a few months. I had an interesting case of a little boy, 6-year-old boy, who was vibrant, developmentally precocious. He came in with some pretty severe neurological decline, and we knew it was going to be something serious. The parents were originally from Pakistan. The dad was an engineer. He had a master's degree. He was highly educated. He could speak Urdu, but he could also speak English. He was primarily the one that was at the bedside during the day. And then the mother primarily spoke Urdu, a little bit of English, primarily at the bedside during the evening, because they had a 9-month-old little girl that she had to take care of at home. And so I was coming on as we were giving the diagnosis to the family and really to the dad. And so when we told the dad, we think that your child has a severe neurological illness that will lead to progressive decline, he immediately told me, please don't tell my wife. It was a hard thing for me to understand and wrap my mind around at the moment. Anytime that something happens that seems contrary to the way that I would expect somebody to behave, I do think whether or not there could be something driving their behavior that's unknown to me. So when I think about culture, I think about a set of values and beliefs that influence people's behaviors. So it's not necessarily the way that you expect people to act, but it certainly can influence their behavior. And so as I learned a little bit more about this family, I learned that the mom and dad were first cousins. In our culture, that's something that's quite unusual. That is something that is frowned upon, and it's something that we are not comfortable with. But I do know in other cultures it's something that's quite common. It's not something that's just within certain lower level socioeconomic statuses, which I think is sometimes what we think of in our culture. I am Middle Eastern myself. My parents are from Iran, and even within our own circles, it's something that is talked about very freely and not something that is people are ashamed of. And the way that the dad phrased that to me, the way that I found out about it, was that he said, I've known my wife my entire life. We've been best friends since we could walk. I know her better than anybody, and I know it's going to be very challenging for her to handle this. And so for me, it didn't seem like he was operating within his culture, really. It was just him and his wife, and he was thinking of them as individuals. Within this situation, there was some projection of our culture onto them as people. I think sometimes within cultures there are stereotypes, and I think it's a natural thing for people to do. We need to wrap our minds around groups of people. We consider them to be descriptions. We're not trying to be culturally insensitive. And there are certain ways that certain people within certain cultures or even groups of people behave, and even within one geographical area, there are little microcosms of certain ways that you can expect people to behave or what their values might be. And in this case, there is a certain stereotype against Middle Eastern people, in particular Middle Eastern men. The stereotype against Middle Eastern men is that they are in charge and that women have no say. And it's really interesting because all the women within my family are really the people that have the opinions and have the power. And regardless of what happens in politics, within the homes, that is how it is. And so for me, it felt very contrary to have that automatic belief in something I've fought against my entire life, living here in the United States, being born here in the United States, and constantly having people think that women who are Middle Eastern are oppressed. And so the assumption was that this was a Middle Eastern man who was oppressing this Middle Eastern woman, this weak woman who just didn't have an opportunity to say what she wanted to say. I'm a young woman, a young Middle Eastern physician who was sitting down with this supposed misogynistic Middle Eastern man who was crying in front of me, crying because of love of his wife. And that didn't really, he wasn't playing into the supposed behavior that was being projected upon him. And that was hard, because how could I explain to somebody who hadn't had that conversation, who hadn't had that connection, that this is what I was seeing? I was seeing love. And love is something that even within different cultures is quite different, and it is expressed in different ways, right? Because sometimes some cultures, you really aren't even allowed to shake somebody's hand. And so physical affection is not common in every expression of love in every culture. I stood my ground in this case, and I said, for the time being, I'm going to respect the dad's wishes. Because he didn't say, I don't want to ever tell her. It's just that right now this is killing me, and I refuse to do that to my wife. He told me, I do not have the strength, and I do not have the courage. And I told him, well, I'll be there with you. I can help you to have that strength. I can be your strength. I can help you to have that courage. And there were moments where he said, okay, how can we do it? There were moments of hope for him. But I think in the end, he just needed time, and that is what happened. We respected his wishes, and we told him, we said, if Mom is going to ask us, we're going to tell her. She never asked us. I think there really was an understanding between the two of them. Mom is smart. She probably knew her child came in walking and now was on a feeding tube and couldn't talk. She's smart. Whether she's educated or not, she is a mom, and she knows. I think that she also respected her husband, her best friend. It's interesting too, because a lot of people, even in our culture, call their spouses their best friend. This was an interesting best friend. This was someone she had known since she was a young child, him and her. And not only were they friends, though, they were family. And so that bond started way, way, way earlier on. And then as they grew, they added the bond of being spouses. I will never understand that. In the room where we sat down to make decisions as the providers, none of us can understand that. And so we need to trust that he will do the right thing. I think some of the sense of urgency was the fact that we thought that he was going to deteriorate. We thought that there wasn't a lot of time. And I asked him, and I said, okay, well, if something happens and we haven't told her that something could happen, something catastrophic, do you think that she'll be angry? Do you think that she'll be resentful? Because I don't want that for you. As much as this is a strain on your relationship, I don't want this to be the thing that really cracks your relationship, because it's got such a strong foundation. Let's maintain that. And he said that they had such a strong faith in God, and that God knew what's best, and that she would trust God, and that she trusts him. And so I trusted him. Ultimately, within the hospitalization, he ended up going home, and then a few months later in clinic, he asked the neurologist to help him to tell his wife the truth. I think the family just needed some time to heal. I think it's also our responsibility as providers to do our best to keep a family intact. They come in, particularly when they come into the hospital, and this is the worst time of their life. It puts strain on relationships, it puts strain on families. As much as we can support them, and not just with psychosocial support, but when they're asking us to do something that their family needs, even if it's not the typical way that we would go about things, as long as it's legal, which in this case it was, and as long as it's ethical. And I think the hard thing about ethics is that we operate within our culture with ethical beliefs as well. Through all the conversations, I felt that it was both legal and ethical, and I think the right thing for this family. Would it be the right thing for every single family? I don't know. I don't think so. But it was the right thing for this family, and I stand by it. And later on, when we wrote up this situation for everybody else to learn from it, the dad contributed. And he said that he was so thankful to everybody for giving him the time that he needed to heal, and that in the end, we kept this family intact. they will be stronger to take care of their child with a lot of special needs now because we respected that.